Hey guys, welcome to a new episode of Josh's Car Corner. I am still here at the POCI convention, and there's one car here that I absolutely had to profile, owned by this man right here, Thom Sherwood. In 2002, the movie XXX came out starring Vin Diesel, and in that movie, the hero car was a 1967 Pontiac GTO, and it probably was one of the first times a muscle car was used in such a way for a secret agent. And it's an amazing car, and it's an amazing story, and Thom was very kind to bring it to the POCI convention here and show everything off about it. I want to ask you about the car, but before we get to that, I'd just like to get a little bit of background about you and your history with POCI and Pontiacs.
Sure. Well, I'm very proud to say I've been a 35-year member of the Pontiac Open Club International, and I come from Tucson, Arizona. I've been involved with the Arizona chapter there for virtually all that same time, and I've been a GTO enthusiast even before that. I've owned nothing but Pontiacs and GMC trucks, pure Pontiac in my driveway, and very proud to have that distinction. I'm very proud to be here in Fort Worth at the convention. This is probably about the 10th convention that I've attended in all my years. Again, great to be here and great to meet you, Josh.
Yeah, fair, thank you very much. And I am very glad to bring this car here because, to be honest, I was aware of the movie, but I never saw the movie. And back then, I didn't own a GTO, so GTOs were not high on my radar. But now that I know about it, and I can't get enough information about it. So tell me a little bit about your history with the car, how you found out about the movie, and then how you found out about the car.
Sure. Well, it all started, again, with my involvement with the Arizona chapter of the Pontiac Open Club International back in the late 1990s. One of my fellow club members there in the chapter, he and I started writing a movie review column called Rally Reels. And the whole concept was real simple. We'd find movies or TV shows that had Pontiacs featured in them, and we would write a review as if the Pontiacs themselves were the stars instead of humans. The movies themselves we would rate on a scale of 1 to 5 lug nuts. So a movie with 1 lug was a real stinker, and 5 lugs, which of course XXX got 5 lugs, was the best balanced and aligned movie. You just had to go out and see, rent, or watch that movie. So when XXX came out in 2002, I wanted to be sure to be there on opening night. I wanted to see it, of course, for that pure entertainment aspect, as well as to review it for this movie review column, which was also published in Smoke Signals magazine, which is the monthly magazine that members of the Pontiac Open Club International receive. Really have enjoyed the whole process of researching the movie for the movie review, and during that process was able to fortunately interview just some really wonderful key people. And I've made it an obsession, I guess, for lack of a better term, of being able to uncover just about every shred of documentation, information that I can about the movie, interviewing everyone from the director all the way down to the stunt people, the crew, just you name it. I've tried to basically find out just every single shred of information I can about the car.
So the movie comes out in 2002. You keep digging, doing research on the cars, and then how does the car come to be in your possession?
With my research, I was able to follow through with what happened to the cars immediately after the movie was filmed in 2002. Essentially, all 5 of the driving vehicles that were used in the production of the movie all came back from Europe, where the movie was filmed in the Czech Republic. They all came back to Hollywood. And at that point, the movie studio decided they were going to put 2 of the cars up for sale on eBay. They hired a third-party company called Rainmakers to actually sell a lot of the props and wardrobe associated with the film on eBay. And so a lot of that stuff actually got out to the public. 2 of the vehicles were sold, as well as the Ahab submarine was sold on an eBay auction. Well, the 2 GTOs that were screen used cars from the film were actually purchased by a young fellow in Malibu who bought them as an investment. And in my research, I was able to track him down. He became so impressed with my knowledge of the movie, GTOs in general, and such that when he decided to sell the first of his 2 cars in 2005, he hired me to actually drive that car across the auction block at Barrett-Jackson in 2005. That particular car was called Stunt Car Number 1. That car sold to a collector back in Virginia. So at this point, the fellow in Malibu still had just the 1 car. 3 or 4 months after this episode of Bear Jackson, the sequel movie, xXx 2, starring Ice Cube, was released in the theaters. That was May of 2005. And so at that point, the fellow in Malibu, who still had the one remaining car, which is the Flame Car that I have here with me today, he decided this would be the proper time for him to sell his investment in it. So he hired me to then help him sell the car on eBay. Long story short, I ended up being the high bidder for the car. And I never in a million years dreamed that I'd be able to afford it, but sure enough I was. And I was just as happy as a kid in a candy store. So I actually got to purchase the car. So it's now got a very, very happy home with me in Tucson.
That's awesome. Thom gave a great presentation to those of us who attended the meet a couple of days ago. There is one story I want to touch on that you talked about in the presentation, and that's the story of the foam. If you guys remember from the movie, the back seat flips forward and all the weapons are stored behind the back seat, and there's this piece of giant foam that holds all the pieces in. But when you got the car, the foam wasn't in there.
Let's first of all clarify that the car that we're talking about here is called the SFX Flame Car. SFX stands for Special Effects. And of the 5 cars that were built for the movie, the car that we have here is the only one that was actually built with all the special effects on board. And by that I mean it had the roof that ejected, it had the back seat that flipped over to reveal all the weapons, had the actual flamethrower in the hood scoop, had the rockets that launched out of the upper headlights. All these things are all real. They're all actual practical instruments that work. None of that stuff on the film was computer generated. It was all real. And I have to stress that because that's kind of the unique thing about this particular car. I knew that the piece of foam rubber that held all the weapons in the back seat, that was missing. I was curious to know what had ever happened to it. So during my interviews with all these various people that I've tracked down, I met up with a fellow who is the official armorer for the movie, a fellow by the name of Michael Pavitt, who's near Burbank, California. And his company supplied all the weapons. So I had a sit-down interview with him a number of years ago, talking to him about the weapons that were in the back seat. As I concluded my interview with him for my research, I said, by the way, whatever happened to that piece of foam rubber that was in the back of the car? It's kind of priceless to me. I'd love to have that. Where do you think that thing is? So he was a little sketchy, but he explained to me when he was packing up to return to the United States after the filming in 2002, that he simply left that piece of foam over in the Czech Republic at the movie studio there. The studio is called Barrandov Studios, and it's an old facility that's been around since the communist era times, from actually going back to the 40s and 50s, if I understand correctly. I wanted to take note of that. Where could I find that? And is there a chance that maybe that piece of foam rubber still existed? This is about 12 years after the film had finished. So the likelihood of that still being around wasn't too great. Anyway, he could only remember the first name of a fellow who worked there. So I did my research again, got online, found the phone number of this place in the Czech Republic, and waited up one night, really late because of the time zone difference, of course. It was like maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. I just start dialing this number, this crazy multi-digit strange phone number over in the Czech Republic. Eventually I hear a strange voice, a woman's voice kind of answering the phone in what I assume was the Czech language or possibly Russian language. And I didn't know how to respond other than, hello, does anyone speak English? So this phone conversation goes dead. It goes quiet. I have no idea if she's hung up on me. I have no idea if she's put me on hold. No idea whatsoever. So a minute or two goes by. I'm on hold apparently, and all of a sudden I hear a male voice, hello, may I help you? And I said, yes, I'm looking for somebody named Peter. And the response on the other line is, my name is Peter. And so with that, I made the connection. And I explained to him who I was. I introduced myself saying, I'm looking for this piece of foam rubber from 12 years ago from the movie xXx. And he said, oh, no, I'm sorry, I cannot help you. That is long gone. That's long gone. No, we have moved. It's not available. I'm sorry, I cannot help you. I wasn't dissuaded, of course. I was still charged with the idea. Maybe this thing possibly could exist. So with that, I said, well, I'd like to get your email address and perhaps email you a photo of exactly what it is that I'm looking for. And got his email address and thanked him for his time, hung up, composed the email, sent it off with a photo of the foam rubber in the back seat. The next morning I woke up, I called the guy back in Hollywood, and I said, by the way, I just got a hold of the fellow Peter over in the Czech Republic. get any ideas of where I can tell him maybe to look a little more specifically for where that piece of foam rubber was left by you? He says, tell him to look in the machine gun vault. Okay. So I thanked him, hung up, got on the computer, emailed the guy over in the Czech Republic, says, Peter, the guy in Hollywood says you should look in the machine gun vault for this piece of foam. So hit the send button on that email. 24 hours later, I wake up, check my email. There's the email. Tom, you are a lucky man. We have found your foam. And with that, he's included a photo as an attachment of this piece of foam, this actual piece of foam rubber from the GTO from 12 years ago, sitting on the floor of this drab olive green communist-era machine gun vault, for lack of a better description of this thing. So you can imagine, again, how happy I was. So the next step was, how do I get that? Well, I thought, well, why not combine that with a trip to the actual filming locations in the Czech Republic, which indeed is what I did.
And in the presentation, he showed all these beautiful places he went to, recreated some of the scenes. In fact, he actually found the brick wall where there's this famous poster scene where Vin Diesel's up on the top of the car with the harpoon gun about to fire it. He found that wall in this little village in the Czech Republic, and then he photoshopped it so he could put his car in front of the wall, and it was a really cool thing to see.
That was fun because there wasn't actually any good publicity shots of the SFX Flame Car specifically lined up against this block wall. And this is along the Vltava River in Prague itself, and because that particular photo that we're talking about with Vin Diesel standing up with a harpoon gun, because that is such a iconic shot, I wanted to recreate that as a side view at high resolution, and was able to find, as you mentioned, the exact spot with the exact cutouts of the blocks and everything, so we were in the exact place. It was really kind of a cool homecoming for me.
It was a very cool picture. Hey, would it be okay if we just took a walk around the car so you could show us all the different weapons and things that they put on it?
Yeah, glad to.
The first thing, why don't we talk about just the flames, the scoop here?
The scoop itself, as you can see, the damage on there is caused by the flames. Happy to be able to say that it survived the high heat of the actual flames. Again, when you watch the movie, you see a couple quick edits of the flames coming out, and you can see how it basically wrapped around, scorched the paint, warped the fiberglass, the actual resin. There's some damage on it, but I think that's a really cool way to show some of the provenance on this car, that again, this is the exact car that is used in the movie. And I do want to take just a moment to explain to people, the viewing audience, that this is a real GTO. It's not a Le Mans that's been cloned, and it's not a car that has a small block Chevy motor. We'll go ahead and lift the hood in just a second so you can see for yourself that this is a real Pontiac powered car. For Pontiac enthusiasts like everyone here at the POCI convention, that's kind of a point of contention. Everybody wants to make sure that this car is a real Pontiac, not something that's powered by a corporate engine. So let's actually take a look.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pop the hood, and we can zoom in on this engine underneath here and see some of the other items that were unique to this car. So what we have here is actually the YS code 400 cubic inch Pontiac engine block with the original quadrijet carburation. It's rated at 335 horsepower. Again, this is the actual original engine, numbers matching engine to this particular car. And you can see on the firewall, of course, is the data plate. It is showing it as a 242 code GTO, not a Le Mans. And as long as we got that out of the way, let's look at, again, some of the other cool things that are on the front end of this car. Under the hood, you've got a couple unique things I'll point out to you that, again, relate to the special effects equipment that were installed by Hollywood as this car is being built. So these are two real obvious brackets here that are a little unusual, and these particular brackets were used to hold a device called a bimba. Bimba is a kind of a trade name for a particular piece of equipment that's essentially a charged gas canister which would allow gags or special effects to happen. In this particular case, these were used to hold the bimba that fired the rockets at the upper headlights. So if you can picture kind of a canister here that leads to this tube here, this particular tube, and one on the opposite side corresponding way over here, these two, if you can picture, wrap around underneath the fenders, and if you want to bring your camera down,
yeah, right down here, Joe,
you can actually see the hardware, the steel tube that enables the rockets to fire out. In front of that would be what's called a breakaway T3 lens, which is a basically piece of plastic that as a rocket would come out, it would shatter to make that effect happen on screen. So let me show you a couple other things. Again, up under the hood here. There's another interesting little bracket here, a couple little holes and things like this. This all related to the plumbing hardware that ran the flamethrower. One other thing I'll point out under the hood here is a piece of brown zip cord. This is just lamp cable, nothing at all exotic, but it feeds through from the firewall, just kind of wrapped up here. But on the end is a standard General Motors wiring harness clip. For many, many years I had no idea what that was doing, why it was wrapped up there underneath and just sitting just like it is today. Well, I eventually figured out, well, that if you were to unravel that, it would actually go over to the windshield wiper motor over there. What I eventually found out that was an electrical lead to operate the flipping rear seat. So essentially, the rear seat gag that you see in the film was operated by hitting the windshield wiper switch. It was plain and simple. Kind of a cool little thing. That motor's currently disconnected, but which is why I don't have that hooked up. But we'll still be able to show you the flipping rear seat.
Yeah.
One other thing we'll point out on the front of the car before we move around to the side, I want to point out the license plate. This is a European license plate that's been trimmed down. It was just some random plate, but all 5 of the vehicles that were made for the film all have matching plates, KY290. There was an additional character up on the left, an additional character on the right that were simply trimmed off. You can see the rough edges that were cut off, basically just so it could fit within the confines of the American license plate proportions there. So this is the actual license plate that you see in the film, and of course there's a corresponding one on the back that would have registration stickers for the Czech Republic that would go in these 2 little indentations there.
Let's absolutely take a look at the interior, because this interior is mental. I mean, I know it's all Hollywood magic, but it's crazy all the things they shoved into this thing.
This is one of 3 dashboards that were actually constructed for the film. And, you know, all sorts of really cool blinking lights and gauges. It's not at all meant to relate to a specific function other than 2 things that are shown on the film. One is a switch that enables the roof to come off. Another is to operate the flamethrower. And those are done by real quick insert shots in the movie. They're basically just for show, as you would imagine for the movie. But the whole intent there was the car to have all these additional features for unknown functions, as the car was quickly modified overnight by the NSA crew to perform all these wild and crazy gags that you see on film. Some of the things that are seen on the film, of course, the speedometer and the tachometer, they're actually programmed to accelerate, decelerate at different rates to emulate whether the car might be accelerating, decelerating, that type of thing. There is a rudimentary GPS screen here. This actually never got on screen itself, but this was supposed to represent the Ahab and the GTO traveling down the street. Instead, they used a digital screen up in this particular place with green screen animation there. That's currently not installed on the car. A couple other things that I'll point out, the B&M shifter and the nitrous tank here. This is not actually functional. It's purely just decorative. So the car does not actually have a nitrous situation plumbed to it. Another thing I'll point out here, on the inside of the door panels are the solenoids that are actually used to operate the opening of the door. On the hardtop cars, there would be buttons that you see Vin Diesel's character click in the movie that would trigger the solenoids to basically pop the door open without the use of the door handles, which have been shaved on the outside of the car. Another feature I'll point out on the interior of the car is the bucket seat, which has been very specifically modified. For those of you who are catching all the interesting details, you'll notice that this is actually a passenger side bucket. How do you know that? Because the button is located on the inboard side. It should be in that position. There's a long story I won't get into right now, but this was actually designed originally to be over on the driver's side of the car. But here is the seat that actually held the harness for the parachuting scene. Right now I've got a little piece of foam rubber in there temporarily. I've got the actual parachute stored away elsewhere for right now, but this is the what I call the chute seat, where the harness for the parasail that Vin Diesel straps himself into is located there. And of course, the back seat, the flipping of the back seat is something which is a real cool gag that people enjoyed seeing. Some of the weapons that we have here, none of which really got used in the film except for what's missing here. What's missing is the harpoon gun. I don't have the harpoon gun because, well, it's a long story. It's in the hands of the Czech Republic police right now. That's probably the easiest way to explain that.
Yeah, we don't need to go into all the details on that one.
But to actually see the operation of the seat, you can see how it flips around. And voila, it's now a standard-looking seat that will, again, flip over to reveal all the crazy weapons that were installed by the crew.
That is such a cool setup. And then the only other thing, yeah, worth mentioning here is where they covered up, because this was the car that had one of the cars that had the roof fly off.
Yes, this is actually the only car that was originally designed to have the roof eject in the scene. All the cars that were purchased to be modified for use in the film were hardtop cars. And if you are familiar with General Motors A-body or mid-sized cars, you'll know that the quarter panels on hardtop cars are slightly different than convertible cars. So you can tell just by the shapes here that this was originally a hardtop car in which the hardtop was surgically removed to prepare it for that gag of having the roof come off. So there would be a typical package tray here, and the roof panels, the rear window, all that. As the roof comes off, it would reveal all these things. Right now we've got some trim panels that help disguise some of the cuts and such in the middle. What we'll point out here are, again, these hydraulic rams. There's one on either side of the car. These two pieces of equipment were charged again with highly compressed air, which when the trigger was released would allow these things, boom, to pop up at high rate of speed to physically push the roof off. The wind would then catch, as the car is being driven, the wind would catch the roof to enable it to be to tumble backwards, kind of like a fighter jet canopy. So that was how that particular gag was accomplished on this car. And one last thing we'll point out on the exterior car is the color. The color itself is this really crazy color shifting paint called indigo glassberry prism. And it will, depending on the sun angle and your viewing angle, it will change from blue to purple. And some people say there's even some red and black in there, but it's a very unique paint which was brand new for 2002. New technology back then. It's very, very expensive paint. It still is, but it was one of the cool stealthy features that the director wanted to work into the production of the movie.
Yeah, just standing over it right now with a little bit of light change, I can see it change. It's purple right here and it's blue right here. So it's very subtle, but it's very, very cool. Two more things I want to point out is, one, in your travels with the car, you've been very fortunate to meet Rob Cohen and Vin Diesel and some of the big production names, Ice Cube, and they have signed the trunk lid. I shot a picture of that yesterday, and I'll show you that right now, all the signatures across the trunk lid. But the other one I want to point out is this thing has a valid Arizona license plate on it. You drive this car.
The car is indeed street legal, yes. Occasionally I'll break it out for a little bit of a joyride or go to a club function or a cruise night, that type of thing. I got to be careful though, because people who recognize the car, just kind of like moths to a flame, they want to really check it out and get close. And I've had a couple of close encounters from people who weren't paying attention to what they should be as they're driving along. But yes, indeed, the car is street legal. Furthest I've driven it a couple hundred miles to a car show, but otherwise it gets trailered to some of these larger events across country.
Absolutely. Well, it is an amazing car, and I am so grateful to you for bringing it and for giving us the opportunity. I'll check it out, Tom. Thank you so much for showing it to me. And if you haven't seen the movie XXX, you got to see it. I know I'm going to watch it now because I've never seen it. And also, this car does make a cameo in the third movie that just came out a few months ago for about a minute and a half. So if you want to see it, it's in both movies. I know I'm going to be watching them all. Thanks for watching this episode of Josh's Car Corner. We'll see you guys next time.